Today, we're counting down the top 10 most valuable DC comics of the year 1974. Yet, interestingly, this year doesn't really have any key issues. That's a real oddity. It's like the only year ever that DC doesn't have like a big pile of major key issues. Of course, there are comics that are valuable, but if you look at the chart, you'll see that the top 26 comics of the year all rank the highest simply because they are in the 100-page super spectacular giant size format. And because those books are harder to find in top grades, that has propelled the high grade prices on these books. So I'm not going to go through every one of the 100-page giants, but I'm going to showcase one of each title that ranks high. So we're actually going to, instead of just doing the top 10 in order, we're going to start with number 31. And we're going to make our way through titles showcasing some of the big key issues of the year. So in 31st place of the year, we have Flash 225. This is a Professor Zoom cover story, which is why it is now valuable. Print run estimated 184,000 copies. We've got the Reverse Flash and Green Lantern in this issue. It's even a Nick Cardy bondage cover. It ranks 31st of the year and 232nd most valuable DC comic of the 1970s. There are 82 copies graded by CGC in all grades combined on the Census, and there are 23 9.6s or higher. Heritage has only sold 8 copies. And note the cool cover here with the 2 flashes, Zoom and Flash to be correct. In the Overstreet Price Guide annual, you can see the growth year by year in all grades. And low grades, the book's been pretty well stalled. Had a little bump in high grades in the last year. Now a $90 book. On the Census, there are 6 9.8s and 17 9.6s. The next book on our countdown I'm going to showcase is in 30th place. This is Adventure Comics 431. This is the first of 10 issues featuring the Spectre as the main story and cover. We have Jim Aparo cover and art, also Alex Toth art in this issue. Print run estimated 168,000 copies. This ranks 30th of the year, 230th of the decade. There are 217 copies graded, only 33 high grade. Heritage Auctions has sold 25 copies since they started selling comics weekly in the year 2000. Comics at this time had a 20-cent cover price. Overstreet Price Guide, in the last few years, this book is stalled in all grades. A $90 book. There's 7 9.8s and 26 9.6s. The next book I'm going to showcase is Famous First Edition. Now, we actually have 2 major keys on the list here. We have the oversized Treasury reprint of Action Comics #1 and also of Detective Comics 27. First appearances of Superman and Batman. And just to let you know a little bit more about this series, Famous First Edition had really odd numbering. There are C26, 28, 30, and then the numbering changed to F4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then later relaunched with C61. So there's not many books in the series, but what's unique about these are the first complete reprints that DC ever did of their most iconic, valuable Golden Age comics. But these were all published in Treasury oversized format. And over the decades, many people have ripped off the front cover and tried to sell these as original copies. And trust me, over the decades, many copies have been sold where people either mistakenly didn't know that they didn't have the first printing, or they've done it on purpose, trying to take advantage of buyers who were not knowledgeable about this. What's also interesting about the Famous First Edition series is that all these issues came out as soft covers, but some of them also had a rare hardcover edition printed. These are very hard to find. And so we have hardcover editions of the Action Comics 1 and Detective Comics 27. If we, there's all the covers there for you. If we compare them in the Overstreet Price Guide, you can see there's a big difference between the hardcover and the softcover editions. Hardcover versions are at $360, and the soft covers are at $95 currently for the Action and the Detective issues. All the other issues are valuable as well, but not as valuable. So here's a couple other samples. We've got hardcover and softcover versions of Sensation 1, Whiz, and Batman 1 and Wonder Woman #1. And because these are oversized treasuries, they cannot be graded by CGC. So finding actually near mint copies of these are very tough, again, due to the oversized nature. The spines and corners get a lot of damage on these. Next on our countdown, we're going to focus on number 27. This is Sandman #1. Now, this was yet another Jack Kirby creation. Now that he was back at DC, this is the first appearance of the Bronze Age Sandman by the original creators, Jack Kirby and Joe Simon. Print run was at least 200,000 copies. Many speculators hoarded this book right from day one because Jack Kirby was truly the king of comics at this time. So this is probably the easiest book to find on our countdown today. It ranks 27th of the year, 201 of the decade. There are 970 copies graded, including 253 9.6s or higher. Heritage has even sold 131 of these. Classic Jack Kirby art on the cover. In the Overstreet Price Guide, the last few years, this book has been stalled in all grades, currently at $110. There is a 9.9 of this book and 133 9.8s. And also to note, on the CGC Census, there is a variation of this #1 cover, and there are 87 copies of that graded. So be watching for that. That one might take off more in the future. The next book I'm going to showcase is Detective Comics 441. This ranks 21 of the year. Why? Because this is the first appearance of Harvey Bullock, who appeared in the 2014 Gotham TV series. We've also got a Manhunter story with art by Walter Simonson. This is a 100-page giant issue from DC, 60-cent cover price. Remember, these were quite expensive when comics were regularly 20 cents. This print run was low at 145,000 copies. And believe it or not, DC was considering canceling this title altogether in the mid-70s because print runs were getting so slow. Batman was just not a big seller for DC at this time. It ranks 21 of the year and 160th of the decade. There are now 143 copies graded, 20 high grade, 11 sold at Heritage. And in the Overstreet Price Guide, it's been stalled in all grades for the last few years, sitting at $125. There are 8 9.8s and 12 9.6s. Next, we're going to look at Young Romance Comics 197. This book ranks 15th of the year. It's another 100 super spectacular page issue, 50-cent cover price. This was the first of 8 issues in a row of this title to be in the 100-page format. We have Win Mortimer art. Print run estimated 130,000 copies. Romance was still selling pretty well for DC. If you consider that Young Romance was selling almost as high as Detective Comics at this time. This book ranks 15th of the year, 152nd of the decade. Only 24 copies graded and only 2 high-grade copies. Heritage has sold 3. In the Overstreet Price Guide, a little bump up in the past year in higher grades, now at $130. There are no 9.8s, but there are 2 9.6s and 5 9.4s. Next on our countdown, now we're jumping into the top 10. Young Love 108 ranks 9th of the entire year. This is the second of 7 100-page issues in a row in this title, which has a Nick Cardy cover art. Print run estimated 128,000 copies. It ranks 9th of the year, 145th of the decade, only 11 graded by CGC, and only 1 high-grade copy. Heritage has sold 4. Overstreet Price Guide, again, a little bump in higher grades this year, $130. There is a 9.8 and 3 9.4s. Next, we're going to look at Wonder Woman 211. This ranks 7th of the year. Nick Cardy cover art. We've also got art from Rick Estrada and Vince Coletta. Print run estimated 150,000 copies, outselling Detective Comics. Ranked 7th of the year and 143rd of the decade. This is the first of 2 Wonder Woman issues that would be 100-page issues. Only 66 copies graded, 21 high grade, Heritage 17, white background cover. Overstreet Price Guide, a little bump in high grades up to $130. There are 6 9.8s and 15 9.6s. The next book we're going to showcase, we're going to jump up now to the top 2 most valuable books of the year. And so number 2 of the year, Batman 255. This white background key issue features the death of Professor Milo. We have Neil Adams and Nick Cardy cover art. There is a story reprinted here telling that Bruce Wayne's father used to also wear a bat costume and fight crime, reprinted from Detective 235. Print run of Batman was 193,000 copies at this time, ranks number 2 of the year, 97 of the decade. There were 196 copies graded, 22 high grade, 16 at Heritage. In the Overstreet Price Guide, a little bump in high grade this year, $150. There are 6 9.8s and 16 9.6s. That brings us to the number 1 DC comic of 1974, ranking number 1, Batman 258, blue background cover, Two-Face appearance, including the cover. It's a 100-page issue. Nick Cardy cover art, Irv Novick and Dick Giordano interior art. This issue has the first mention ever of Arkham Hospital, which would be renamed Arkham Asylum in issue 260. The book ranks number 1 of the year, 96 of the decade. Print run 193,000 copies. Census is still pretty low on this one, even though this is the biggest book of the year. 154 copies graded, 18 high grade, 8 sold at Heritage. Overstreet Price Guide's actually been stalled at all grades for the last 5 years, sitting at $150. There are 2 9.8s and 16 9.6s. Now let's compare the books that I showcased here today on the CGC Census to get an idea of just how many books are being graded. And you'll see the only book that really has a lot of copies graded at all is Sandman #1, the Jack Kirby new series, 970 copies. After that, it drops way down. Adventure Comics 431 has 217. After that, everything is much lower. And as expected, the romance comics are the lowest, with Young Love 108 only has 11 copies on the census. Sandman #1 has a 9.9, unlike all the other books. And Young Romance 197 is the only book that does not even have a 9.8. Otherwise, every book at least has a 9.8. And the one most common again is Sandman #1 with a whopping 133 9.8s on the census. Well, there you go. This was an unusual year. The 100-page spectaculars dominated the entire list, but we showcased some of the cool key issues that rank fairly high. This series continues every week. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this channel.